I arrived at the spa resort on the coast, desperate for an escape from the suffocating routine that had gripped my life for months. The drive had been long, but as I pulled up to the elegant entrance, the salty sea air rushed in through the window, carrying hints of eucalyptus and freedom. I checked in quickly, my hands trembling slightly from exhaustion, and was handed the key to my ocean view room. The room was spacious and inviting, with crisp white linens on the king-sized bed and a balcony overlooking the endless waves. I unpacked slowly, hanging my clothes in the closet and placing my toiletries on the marble bathroom counter. Sunlight streamed in, warming the wooden floors, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of peace settling over me. My days back home were filled with endless office meetings where voices droned on about spreadsheets and deadlines that meant nothing to my soul. Evenings brought solitude in my empty apartment, where the silence echoed louder than any conversation. I had booked this week-long stay on a whim, hoping the ocean would wash away the invisible weight pressing on my chest. Curiosity led me to schedule a massage on my first afternoon, more out of boredom than real need. The resort's brochure promised deep relaxation and energy renewal, words that sounded almost too good to be true. I slipped into a soft robe and made my way to the spa, my bare feet padding softly on the cool tiled floors. The spa area was a serene oasis, dimly lit with soft amber lights and filled with the gentle hum of flute music. Aromas of lavender and jasmine hung in the air, calming my racing thoughts as I entered the treatment room. A plush massage table waited in the center, draped in fresh white sheets that invited surrender. She entered the room moments later, her presence immediately commanding yet soothing. Tall and graceful, with her hair tied back in a simple ponytail, she wore the crisp white uniform that hugged her curves just enough to stir something unspoken in me. Her smile was warm, professional, but her eyes held a depth that made my pulse quicken slightly. She instructed me to lie face down, her voice a soft murmur that sent a shiver down my spine. As I settled onto the table, she draped a sheet over my body, her fingers brushing my shoulders lightly in the process. That first touch was electric, warm and assured, awakening sensations I hadn't felt in ages. She began with my shoulders, her oiled hands gliding smoothly over my skin, kneading away the knots I didn't even know were there. Each press was deliberate, releasing tension that had built up from countless hours hunched over a desk. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply as her thumbs circled deeper, drawing out sighs I couldn't suppress. The scent of the massage oil, sandalwood, and vanilla filled my senses, mingling with her subtle perfume. Her hands moved lower, tracing the curve of my spine with expert precision, making my muscles yield completely. It felt intimate, almost too personal, as if she were reading not just my body, but the hidden stresses of my heart. Between my shoulder blades, she paused, applying firmer pressure that bordered on exquisite pain. "There's so much tension here," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. I nodded, words escaping me, lost in the rhythm of her touch that promised more than just relief. As the session progressed, her strokes became longer, sweeping from my neck to the small of my back. My body responded eagerly, relaxing into her care, a subtle heat building beneath the surface. It was more than therapy. It was a connection, fleeting yet profound, leaving me yearning for the hour not to end. When it was over, she gently helped me sit up, handing me a glass of cool water with steady hands. Our eyes met briefly, and in that gaze, I saw a spark of something unspoken. "If you'd like to book another, just let me know," she said softly, her voice lingering like her touch on my skin. The next morning, I woke to the sound of waves crashing gently outside my balcony, but my thoughts were still tangled in the memory of her hands. The massage had left me lighter, as if she'd unraveled something deeper than just muscle knots. I slipped into a sundress and headed to the beach, hoping a walk would clear my head, but her touch lingered like a quiet pulse beneath my skin. Sand warmed my bare feet as I wandered along the shoreline, the ocean stretching endlessly before me. The salty breeze tugged at my hair, and I tried to focus on the rhythm of the waves, but my mind kept drifting back to her. The way her fingers had pressed into my shoulders, deliberate and knowing, felt like a conversation without words. Back in my room, I flipped through the resort's spa menu, my eyes scanning the list of treatments. I didn't need another massage, not really, but the pull to see her again was undeniable. I called the spa and booked a longer session for that evening, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. The spa was quieter this time, the evening casting soft shadows across the tiled floors. I changed into the robe, my skin prickling with anticipation as I lay face down on the table. The familiar scent of lavender greeted me, but it was her presence when she entered that made the air feel charged. She greeted me with that same warm smile, her eyes catching mine for a moment longer than necessary. "Let's focus on those tight spots again," she said, her voice low and soothing as she poured oil into her hands. The first touch on my shoulders sent a ripple through me, warmer and more deliberate than the day before. Her hands worked slowly, gliding over my skin with a rhythm that felt almost hypnotic. She lingered on my upper back, her fingers tracing the edges of my shoulder blades, coaxing out tension with gentle persistence. Each stroke felt like an invitation, pulling me deeper into a space where only her touch existed. I felt my body soften under her hands, but something else stirred, a heat that spread from her fingertips to my core. Her movements grew slower, more intentional, pausing occasionally as if to gauge my response. When her hand slid to my lower back, just above the sheet, I caught my breath, my skin tingling under her touch. She leaned closer, her breath brushing my neck as she whispered, "You're holding so much here." The words felt intimate, like she was speaking to more than just my muscles. I turned my head slightly, catching her gaze in the dim mirror across the room, and saw a flicker of something that mirrored my own longing. The session stretched on, her hands exploring every curve with a care that felt personal. When her fingers grazed the sides of my waist, I arched slightly, unable to hide my body's response. She didn't pull away. Instead, her touch lingered, soft and teasing, as if testing the boundaries between us. As the session ended, I sat up slowly, the air heavy with unspoken tension. She handed me a towel, her fingers brushing mine, and said, "If you want, I can come to your room after my shift. It's quieter there, and we can work on what's left without rushing." My heart raced as I nodded, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, please come." I left the spa with my pulse pounding, her words echoing in my mind. The evening stretched ahead, filled with the promise of something more than a massage. As I walked back to my room, the ocean's murmur seemed to carry her voice, and I knew I was already falling into something I couldn't name. The wait for her arrival felt endless, each minute stretching as I paced my room, the ocean's rhythm outside doing little to calm my nerves. I had showered, the warm water soothing my skin still tingling from her earlier touch, and slipped into a light silk robe that felt soft against me. The room was bathed in the glow of a few candles I'd lit, their flickering light dancing on the walls, mingling with the scent of jasmine I'd sprayed lightly. I stood by the balcony, watching the horizon darken as the sun dipped below the waves. The air was warm, carrying the faint saltiness of the sea, and I tried to focus on the sound of the tide to steady my racing heart. But every creak of the floorboards or distant footstep in the hallway made me turn, expecting her knock. When it finally came, a soft tap at the door, my breath caught. I opened it to find her standing there, no longer in her crisp spa uniform, but in a simple tank top and shorts, her hair loose and falling over her shoulders. She carried a small bag, oils, towels, a folded blanket, and her smile was softer, more personal than in the spa. "Come in," I said, stepping aside, my voice quieter than I intended. She moved past me, her arm brushing mine, and the air between us felt alive with possibility. She set her bag on the bed, glancing around the room before turning to me with eyes that seemed to see right through my robe. "Let's make you comfortable," she said, spreading the blanket over the bed and gesturing for me to lie down. I hesitated for a moment, then untied my robe, letting it fall to reveal the thin camisole and shorts I wore underneath. Her gaze lingered, warm and unhurried, as I settled face down on the soft surface. She poured oil into her hands, the familiar scent of sandalwood filling the room, and began with my shoulders. Her touch was different here, freer, more intimate, without the clinical boundaries of the spa. Her fingers glided over my skin, slow and deliberate, each stroke sending warmth radiating through me. As she worked lower, her hands traced the curve of my spine, pausing at my lower back where the tension seemed to melt under her touch. But it wasn't just relief. Her fingers lingered longer than necessary, brushing the edges of my hips, and I felt my body respond, a subtle heat pooling deep inside. She leaned closer, her breath warm against my neck as she whispered, "You're so tight here. Let me help you let go." Her words sent a shiver through me, and when her hands slid beneath the hem of my shorts, grazing the tops of my thighs, I arched slightly, a soft gasp escaping my lips. She didn't pull back. Instead, her touch grew bolder, exploring with a gentleness that felt like a caress. I turned my head, catching her eyes, and the air between us thickened with unspoken desire. Her fingers paused, resting on my waist, and then she leaned down, her lips brushing my shoulder in a kiss so light it felt like a question. My body answered, turning toward her, and her hands guided me onto my back, our gazes locked in a moment that felt like it could unravel everything. Her touch shifted, no longer just a massage, but something deeper, her fingers tracing slow paths across my stomach, up to my collarbone, then back down. When her lips found my neck, soft and warm, I reached for her, my hands finding the curve of her waist. The blanket beneath us crumpled as we moved closer, the line between therapy and intimacy dissolving into the candlelit warmth of the room. In the quiet of my room, with only the distant waves as our soundtrack, we hardly spoke, letting our bodies communicate instead. Her lips met mine in a kiss that started slow, tentative, but quickly deepened into something hungry and raw. I tasted the faint saltiness on her tongue, my hands finding the hem of her tank top as I pulled her closer, feeling the heat of her skin against me. She broke the kiss just long enough to slip off her top, revealing smooth curves that I traced with my fingertips, savoring the softness. My robe fell away completely, forgotten on the floor, as her hands explored my body with a freedom we hadn't had in the spa. Every touch was electric, her palms sliding over my breasts, thumbs circling in ways that made me gasp into her mouth. I pulled her down onto the bed with me, our legs tangling as we pressed together, skin on skin. Her kisses trailed down my neck, lingering at the pulse point before moving lower, her mouth warm and insistent on my collarbone. I arched under her, my fingers weaving into her hair, guiding her as waves of desire built between us. Her hand slipped lower, tracing the line of my hip before dipping between my thighs, finding me already wet and ready. She teased slowly at first, her fingers circling with expert precision, drawing out moans I couldn't hold back. Our eyes locked as she watched my reactions, her own breath quickening in response to my pleasure. I reached for her, mirroring her movements, my hands sliding under her shorts to feel the warmth there. She shuddered against me, her hips moving instinctively as I explored, matching her rhythm with my own. The air grew thick with our shared breaths, the intimacy of the moment wrapping around us like the blanket beneath. She whispered against my skin, her voice husky as her fingers delved deeper, curling just right to send sparks through me. I clung to her, nails lightly scraping her back, lost in the sensation of her inside me. The build was exquisite, tension coiling until it shattered, my body trembling in release as she held me close. Not wanting to leave her behind, I shifted, my lips finding her breast, tongue flicking over the sensitive peak. She moaned softly, her hand guiding mine lower, urging me on as I slipped inside her. Her walls clenched around my fingers, warm and inviting, her hips rocking in a dance that pulled me deeper. We moved together, our bodies sinking in a rhythm that felt natural, inevitable. Her climax came with a gasp, her fingers digging into my shoulders as she rode the waves. Afterward, we collapsed into each other, limbs entwined, the afterglow settling over us like a soft veil. Lying there, her head on my chest, I finally broke the silence. "This was so much more than a massage," I murmured, my fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. She lifted her head, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of satisfaction and something deeper, unspoken. She nodded, her hand cupping my cheek as she leaned in for another kiss, softer this time. But in her touch, I felt a hint of hesitation, a shadow that suggested this night might complicate things. For now, though, I pushed it aside, pulling her closer, content in the warmth of her body against mine. The ocean's murmur filled the room, a soothing backdrop to our quiet breaths. We didn't rush to dress or speak of what came next. Instead, we lingered in the intimacy we'd created. Her fingers intertwined with mine, a simple gesture that felt profound in the afterglow. Morning light filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a golden glow over the tangled sheets where we lay entwined. I woke first, her arm draped across my waist, her steady breathing a comforting rhythm against my back. For a moment, I just watched her, the way her lashes fluttered slightly in sleep, memorizing the peace on her face. She stirred soon after, her eyes opening to meet mine with a sleepy smile that made my heart ache. We didn't rush to get up. Instead, her hand traced lazy circles on my hip, pulling me closer for a soft kiss that lingered. The taste of her lips, still warm from the night, reignited the spark we'd shared hours before. "Tell me about you," I whispered, my fingers intertwining with hers as we shifted to face each other fully. She hesitated briefly, then opened up about her life at the resort, the long hours in the spa that left her craving real connection. Her voice was soft, vulnerable, revealing a loneliness that mirrored my own empty evenings back home. I shared my story in return, the endless grind of corporate meetings and the hollow apartment waiting for me each night. As we talked, our bodies stayed close, legs tangled, her hand occasionally brushing my thigh in a way that sent shivers through me. It felt like we'd known each other far longer than a few days, our confessions weaving us tighter together. The morning slipped away in that intimate cocoon, but eventually we rose, drawn to the balcony by the call of the sea. We stood there in our robes, her arms around me from behind, watching the waves crash below. Her chin rested on my shoulder, and I felt her lips press a gentle kiss to my neck, turning the simple moment into something electric. We decided to spend the day outside, away from the room's temptations, starting with a walk along the beach. Hand in hand, we strolled barefoot on the sand, the sun warming our skin as we ignored curious glances from other guests. Her fingers squeezed mine occasionally, a silent affirmation that this was real, not just a fleeting escape. Lunch was at a seaside cafe where we sat close, our knees touching under the table. We shared plates of fresh seafood, laughing over small stories from our pasts, her foot sliding against mine in playful tease. The conversation flowed easily, but beneath it, a current of desire hummed, making every glance feel charged. Back in the room as evening fell, the intimacy returned with full force. We undressed slowly, her eyes drinking in every inch of me as I did the same to her. Her hands mapped my body anew, fingers trailing from my shoulders down to my breasts, then lower, igniting fires wherever they touched. She guided me to the bed, her lips following the path her hands had taken, kissing my neck, my collarbone, then lingering on my stomach. When her mouth moved between my thighs, warm and insistent, I gasped, my hands clutching the sheets. She took her time, her tongue exploring with a skill that built the pleasure layer by layer until I shattered under her. I pulled her up afterward, our kisses fierce as I returned the favor, my fingers sliding inside her while my lips teased her sensitive spots. She moaned my name. No, just you, her body arching in response, her climax washing over her in waves. We held each other after, but a shadow crept in. My vacation was ending soon, and the thought of leaving twisted inside me. That night, as we lay together, I voiced the question hanging between us. "What happens next?" I asked, my head on her chest, listening to her heartbeat. She sighed, her fingers stroking my hair, admitting she didn't know, but that she didn't want this to end. The final morning dawned too soon, sunlight piercing the curtains and pulling me from a dreamless sleep beside her. I lay there, watching her chest rise and fall, reluctant to move and shatter the fragile bubble we'd created. My flight was that afternoon, a stark reminder that this escape had an end, no matter how much I wished otherwise. She woke with a soft sigh, her eyes finding mine immediately, filled with the same unspoken dread. We lingered in bed, her fingers tracing patterns on my back as we exchanged quiet kisses that tasted of goodbye. The warmth of her body against mine felt like the only real thing in a world about to pull us apart. We rose eventually, sharing a shower where water cascaded over us, her hand soaping my skin with a tenderness that made my throat tighten. Laughter bubbled up as we played under the stream, but it faded into silence when reality crept back in. Drying off, we dressed slowly, each layer a barrier rebuilding between us. Breakfast was on the balcony, fresh fruit and coffee that neither of us had much appetite for. We talked about everything except the inevitable. her hand holding mine across the table. The ocean below seemed mocking now, its endless waves a contrast to our finite time together. Back inside, we returned to the bed one last time, shedding clothes with an urgency born of desperation. Her lips mapped my body urgently, from my lips down to my thighs, her tongue delving deep and drawing out cries I muffled against her shoulder. I held her close, my fingers inside her, matching her rhythm until we both trembled in release, clinging as if it could anchor us. Afterward, we lay spent, her head on my stomach as I stroked her hair. "Stay," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly, but we both knew my life waited beyond this resort. I pulled her up for a kiss, promising visits and calls, words that felt hollow even as I meant them. Packing was a blur, her helping fold my clothes while stealing glances that spoke volumes. At the door, we embraced fiercely, her scent lingering on my skin as our lips met in a final, lingering kiss. Tears pricked my eyes as I pulled away, the hallway feeling cold and empty without her. In the cab to the airport, the coast blurred past, but my mind replayed every touch, every whisper we'd shared. Back in the city, the routine crashed over me, but now it carried her echo, a warmth that refused to fade. We texted that night, plans forming for her to visit, turning our goodbye into a temporary pause. Nights alone felt different now, my body remembering her curves, her taste, igniting dreams that left me aching. Calls became our lifeline, her voice a balm against the loneliness, building toward the day we'd reunite. What started as tension in my back had unraveled into something profound, a connection that distance couldn't sever. Looking back, that resort massage was the spark, but her presence ignited a fire that still burns. I smile at the memory, knowing our story isn't over. It's just beginning anew. The ocean salt and her touch linger in my soul, a promise of more to come.